it's the wrong audio. Already off to a great start. Mixing up the audio. But welcome everybody to another edition of the IATSC gaming slash union stream. I am so excited this week because with me I have some organizers from Gladius Studios in Puerto Rico. And I would love to introduce them to y'all. So why don't I kick it over to you, Sylvette, to say hello and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, so I'm Sylvette Rosario. I'm a senior 3D character artist at Gladius Studios, and I've been in the industry for a little bit over 6 years, 6 years, and well, pleasure to be here. So, how about Dana?
Well, hello everybody. My name is Dana Pimentel. I'm a graphic designer at Gladius Studios. Also been in Gladius for over 6 years now, and I'm just happy to be here too. So, last but not least, Christopher.
Hello, I'm Christopher Rosario, not related to Silbet, but I am I'm a video game programmer at Gladius, and I have been working for a little over 4 years now.
Wow. Y'all have been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
big thank you and welcome to the stream. I'm so excited to have you. But first things first, Dana and Christopher and I all met in person at GDC this year, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that was like I was starstruck. I was like, oh my god, the Gladius people are here. It's so cool. But can we talk a little bit about how you got to Game Developers Conference this year?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. We got there because of the PRGDA, because they offer these grants with with an all access pass for GDC, and we interviewed and we actually got them. I love the cat.
So rude.
Special
Um,
guest.
yeah, special guest star Beetle. Um, but what's the PRGDA? That's the Puerto Rican Game Developers
Yes,
Association?
that's the Puerto Rican
That's
Game
correct.
Developer Association. Yeah, they're a small growing community of game developers from the island and from outside, in the US. Anybody who's Puerto Rican is there.
Oh, okay, cool. That sounds fascinating. I'd love to know more about what exactly that group is and what they do. Can you how did you get involved with it and ultimately what are their goals?
Yeah, I got involved with it during university because, there were people talking about it, so I decided to join their Discord. And they do a lot of stuff. They do events, they do this thing called cafecitos, which is they pair you up with mentors, and so you get free mentorships. They do game jams, they do all sorts of stuff.
That's super cool. Um, is it a branch of the IGDA?
No,
No.
Okay, it's its own separate thing.
it's an own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's amazing that they do grants programs like that. Sylvette, did you say that you got one year too?
Yeah. I was actually in the first group that got these scholarships back in 2022, and they're granted to the PRGDA by Latin Video Games Federations. Puerto Rico joined their branch as a Latin American country, and so when they got the GDC passes, they started giving them to Latin American game dev organizations, PRGDA being one of them. And I got involved with the PRGDA. I knew their existence, but I didn't get involved up until I got selected as a scholar. And because they help, I saw how much they help our local community try to evolve and develop the industry in Puerto Rico. And I decided to actually become a volunteer with them. So now I'm one of the people who help organize events and for the community in Puerto Rico. And yeah, they're very great with all they do. They educate students and younger people like on how growing an industry this is in Puerto Rico and how achievable it is if we all just keep pushing for it. So, and it's a very nice community. It's not huge, but it's very wholesome, I would say. and we're very tightly knit. They're amazing people.
That's awesome. Dana, do you volunteer with them as well? Is that how you got the scholarship this year? Or did you just apply?
I also went through the interview process. I've been following PRGDA through their Discord for a couple of years now. I'm pretty sure I learned about it through Silhouette, I think, and some of the other game devs and coworkers that are in Gladius and were in Gladius. So I heard about the scholarship that they were granting PRGDA. Just let's apply and see what happens. And I'm very grateful to have been chosen for the scholarship.
Yeah, that's so cool. Um, so Sylvette, did you get involved with PRGDA before you started organizing at your studio, or were they kind of like hand in hand?
Correct. No, I started getting involved with Pure GDA, I would say around 2 years, a year or so before I started even getting the idea. Like I first got the idea when I went to GDC in 2022. That's when I saw the one union organization that was there at the time, which was CWA, and I was like, "There's unions in this industry? No way!" Like that's amazing. So I took a lot of their merch to the studio and started giving it away, like a bunch of stickers, and I'm like, guys, holy crap, this is so amazing. But it didn't. It stayed as an idea. I did get involved with PRGDA. I started helping out with events, posting on their media. I'm in charge of their Facebook, but it wasn't until probably a little bit over a year later, that we were like, we should probably do this. So I started first with PRGDA, and then the organization came.
Right on. Yeah, I feel like a lot of folks who become organizers get involved in their community in a different way as well, like with advocacy organizations like that. Because it's kind of like a stepping stone to becoming an organizer, right? Um, but that's so cool. I'm so glad to learn more about PRGDA and hear about all the wonderful things that they do for workers in Puerto Rico. But let's talk more about Gladius. So how did y'all get y'all like Sylvette and Chris? You've been there, or Dana and Chris, you've been there for 4 years. Sylvette, you've been there for 6 years, right?
I've been
Data
there
has
for
also.
6
Dana
years
and I
too.
have
Yeah.
been for 6. We
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
arrived almost at the same time at the studio.
yeah.
Um, so when you started, like, how did you get your job there?
We started as interns through a government program that was
Yes.
working with local businesses, small businesses in Puerto Rico. And we applied to work for Gladius as interns. And after that, we just got hired full time, and it's been like that ever since.
How about you, Chris? How'd you get started at Gladius?
Yeah, at least for me, right after I graduated, I think I got recommended by a previous programmer that worked at Gladius that we studied together. And yeah, Jamil, the our creative director, he called me like pretty early January, and I was like, okay, I did the interview, and late January I was already hired, so it went pretty well.
Amazing. Um, so so you've been there for a while. You've been there for several years. What like what ultimately brought you to the idea of forming a union?
Um, I got a couple notes on that.
You can start if you want, because
Yeah. Well, since I joined it really early on in 2020, we went remote and then we were forced to go back. And that was one of the major hiccups. Like, we wanted to stay remote because, we did the same work and everything. It was possible to do it remote. So, that was one of the things. The other one was the Puerto Rican minimum wage got raised, and some of the workers were at that new minimum wage and they asked for a raise and they got denied. And pretty soon after that, more than half of the studio got laid off due to redundancies. and that took our morale way down. So we knew we had to do something about it.
Um, Referencing those redundancies, did you end up finding that on the other side of the layoffs that you were just tasked with more work?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
Like
the
essentially three different departments became one. So
yeah.
especially the ones that did concept art, they also ended up doing animation, 3D animation, 2D animation, concept art, and storyboarding. So
in
yeah.
my experience as a 3D in the 3D modeling department, we had a lot of modelers and we were very scattered in different projects. There was a group that got hired for a specific huge project, which we're still working on. And when they cut in half the department, so there's only like I would say three of us with a fourth one, but the fourth one is rarely ever getting any modeling work done because they're a lead. They do a lot of CFX. They do a lot of other stuff. So the modelers had to take all of that load, including that the lead texture artist. We all had to take up on that load, and it took us quite a while to be able to finish um, all of the. It was insane the amount of. We were like, are we ever gonna get this finished? Because it's so much work, and yeah, there was a lot of shift of responsibilities, and obviously those who stayed behind, they had to take up on all that stuff.
Oh, unfortunate. Um, Dana, did you have a different feeling for like what made you want to start working on a union?
No, similar to my coworkers. We were all pretty distressed, distraught after what happened. A lot of them were close friends of ours too. So it's not that it was personal, but it did hurt, I guess, to see your friends go through that. And a lot of, I guess, injustice, you could say, especially with a lot of people in working for minimum wage, and they've been working in the minimum for a while, being working in Gladius for a while. So there wasn't really much of an incrementation in wages, and that's for most of the people working there. There's no yearly increments, no raises, very out of the blue, and just like a couple of rare instances where people will get a raise for usually after certain huge projects, kind of like a pity raise.
Yeah.
um, but it did affect us a lot, especially the workload, the doubling or the tripling of workload for people that have to take on the jobs of other people that used to be there. It was pretty taxing for a lot of us, and it still is till this day. It's pretty taxing, um, since we're such a small group of people now. um, it's a lot of hats and way too many projects going on at the same time. Big projects, demanding projects, not enough time, not enough hands to work on these projects. So, and we've complained a lot about these things to our supervisors, to management, and they keep saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna fix it," but they never do. So in part to protect ourselves from another surprise layoff, but also to protect our needs and the things that I think we deserve respectfully as employees in this environment. So yeah, definitely in solidarity for my fellow coworkers and for my needs as well as an employee. So yeah, definitely it inspired me to also be part of the union.
Yeah, I think um, that kind of leads to another question I have, which is ultimately, how much did you know before you got started about
Mm.
either what a union is or how to form one?
And
Yeah,
me
for me,
personally, next to nothing.
yeah,
A
like
lot of it was a learning curve.
yeah, I was always very pro union. I wanted it from the start but about the process and all the legality of it, I did not know.
Yeah, I pretty much also didn't know anything. I knew the pros because I remember that when I saw the CWA in the GDC, I started doing research, and that was summer 2022.
Mm.
And I started doing a lot of research, and I started bombarding with information Christopher and another coworker of ours called Victor, who's also a programmer, and a former coworker of ours called Carlos, who's also a programmer. And I started like sending them information like, oh, look at this, look at that, like, but it didn't take off until later, and I still wasn't aware of how the process worked, because that would mean I would have to get in touch with an organizer, and at first it seemed a little bit overwhelming to get all. It was scary because change is scary. Like I really, really wanted it, but I'm like, if we go for this, everything's gonna change. I don't know how much it's gonna be good, but it's still scary. So even up to the point where I got connected with Ben, I had no idea on how the process worked. I just had an idea on what they fight for and all that stuff, but how do you organize? No idea. You just say, "Hey, we want to unionize." Yeah, no,
Right.
not that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Um, which is, I'm so glad that you were able to do your own research and get at least the beginnings of some information that you needed. But I guess that also leads to the another question I have for you, which is like, how did you end up getting Ben on speed dial? And if Ben's out there and he's watching, hey Ben, say hey everybody.
So, hey Ben. So funny. I have a former supervisor who's a really good friend of mine, and when he when I got to the studio, he was one of the pillars of the studio. So he was one of the first employees to be employed at Gladius. And I remember we used to talk a lot on the things that were going on. And eventually he told me, what about you guys unionize? And I'm like, yeah, we're thinking on that, but we I don't know how to start. And then he went to SIGGRAPH, and in SIGGRAPH he talked to somebody from the Animation Guild. But since SIGGRAPH at that time was in Vancouver, they had to hook us up with someone from the United States, and that someone was Ben. So that's when I got in touch with Ben, and ever since then we started doing the meetings and all that stuff. So it was through a friend that went to an event and
Wow,
saw the Animation Guild. Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, so yeah, was that like that was like literally at the very beginning?
Yep, you could say that. It was the, I would say, the spark that lit the fire. Like it was the fuel per se. Like that's when I started educating myself, because I remember that you know being such a process that's not very positively looked upon nowadays, even with all the good stuff going on. There's people that like to cling to the bad things that have happened way in the past, and it's not. It's I was afraid on how everybody would take it, so I wanted to get as educated as I could before even presenting an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So there were already people that knew that I was trying to get information, that we were all like, this is something we want to do, and we mentioned it as a joke, like in this, like, oh, how about we unionize? So you say things as a joke, but it's in the back of your mind. It's like, yeah, I'm joking, but not really on this. So
Yeah.
getting in touch with Ben was basically what got us going, and because he always kept in touch, even at times where I would ghost him and say, like, there were times where I was like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't do this. And there were times
Wow.
there were times where he would check in and say, hey, are you guys doing okay? How's everything at Gladius? This and that. And it was like a way to keep it in the back of my head, like, this option is always here if we want to take it, this opportunity. So yeah.
Yeah, because Ben's not able to unionize y'all. Y'all got to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So considering that, how long, like, y'all, like, how big is your studio?
Back then it was count non-managerial people, like just labor workers, about 14 back then. We're a little bit less now because a few have left the studio,
Mm-hmm.
so we're about 12 now, I think. So yeah, very small studio with in the entirety of it, we're supposed to be like 21 with the managerial people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So through this process, like, how long did it take for y'all to get to that, like, supermajority of support to move to signing cards?
I would say that it didn't take that long, to be
No.
honest.
Couple of
Especially
months.
the
Yeah.
supermajority, I think it was there from the start. We knew
Yeah.
something had to be done, and
If they
there
were,
were
yeah,
some that were on the fence.
yeah. Because mostly because uh, like the rest of us, we didn't know a lot about unions. So the people that were on the fence were understandably like iffy about it because
Yep.
we didn't know. We were all doing this for the first time, so it was understandable that people were on the fence. But eventually, it was a unanimous yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
when y'all got to your boss did not voluntarily recognize you.
No, he
Your
did not.
employer forced you
No.
to a vote, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, did they use any particular anti-union tactics to try to get you to change your mind?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
memos, a lot of group talks, a lot of
Yeah.
and a one-on-one from the
One-on-one
boss.
talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which he
There
Um,
was
never used to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was very weird.
Every
Yeah.
day there was a meeting and there was a memo with lots of misinformation, and you
Yeah.
could see us immediately. You could see me immediately texting Ben, like Ben can tell you how much I basically annoyed him on WhatsApp almost on a daily basis. He gave me his WhatsApp, and that was the worst mistake he could have done with me. Because
I doubt you were annoying him at all. He was just
every
as
doubt,
invested in your win.
we were just taking screenshots, and I had to translate it because there was the language barrier where we're more Spanish. Main language is Spanish. Like we're all here bilingual, but everything we do in Puerto Rico is in Spanish. So I would have to kind of loosely translate it at the moment and then just use Google, the photo on Google, and just translate it. And it was like, I know it's gonna be shitty, but you get it. You get the gist. And we would have almost on a daily basis a meeting with Ben where he would debate those points and educate us and show us evidence. There was a time where even I think it was the president or someone big from the animation guild was present in the meeting. I think it was the president or vice president. Don't remember well. My bad. But she was wonderful. And then there was also Steve, which is that one of those meetings was the first time when we actually met Steve on webcam, and they were there to basically educate us. And every time we would bombard them with questions, and they would answer each and every one of them. And then, it was a rough time. It was like a whole month,
Yeah, the
right?
lead up towards the voting was very rough. A lot of union busting, a
It
Yeah.
lot of
was very stressful.
meetings. Yeah, very stressful, but you know,
We got through it.
yeah, we got through it.
So were you during that time were you keeping like pretty consistent communication up with all your coworkers too?
Yeah,
Yes,
that was part of it. And Ben also, told us like, keep everybody, in
together.
check. Like, yeah, everybody stay together, talk
We
about it.
actually had a Discord that we talked about anything union, and we would get meetings there. But like any meeting that we needed, like get on the voice chat. We're gonna talk about this right now because it needs to be talked about right now. So it was one of the times where we were the most united, if anything. And the union busting worked so well that whoever was iffy turned in favor of
Yeah,
the union.
Yes.
So
Wow.
the
Yeah.
opposite
E-
effect.
it did the
Everybody who was
absolute
on the
opposite.
fence, everybody who was on the fence pretty much decided we needed a union after that because, he gave us the reasons to
Yeah.
unionize.
Yep.
Amazing how that works. It's almost as if you try to treat people like they're stupid, they get upset. And
Who would have guessed?
yeah, I would have never. Especially like, and something I know that y'all know really well is that we ultimately want to prepare everybody so that when they see this stuff happening, they recognize it for what it is, which is it's union busting. It's not the truth. It's not reality. It's a last-ditch effort by your boss to get you to not form a union because it's not in their best interest, right?
Hmm.
Did you ultimately face like a lot of fear from your coworkers during that time?
I feel like there was. I feel like there was a little bit of maybe anxiety, but it's like just the curious, like, what is this? How can we make this work anxiety? But there was also a little bit of fear in the sense of, for example, the people that were a little bit over the fence, then again, justifiably, because this is a very unknown process for those who don't, they're not actively looking, how the hell do I form a union at my workplace? So they were because we had layoffs a couple of years ago that left us with PTSD, like that's why we are very empathetic with the layoffs going on right now in the industry. Every time I see one, it's like I relive that. And even though I was not laid off, I have the survivor's guilt where I saw my coworkers laid off and I was like, why couldn't it be me? But I saw fear of that happening again in retaliation of the union, uh, for the union, from my coworkers. They were afraid of that happening. Like, what if they decide to close down the studio? Like, that could happen, but this is what could happen. There's consequences to that. You cannot just retaliate because your employees are unionizing. There's legal consequences to that, and that's not very favorable. So there was a lot of fear on that part. That was kind of the main um, focus on how it could go sideways.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Otherwise, everybody was very into it, honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think with a lot of folks who have faced layoffs at their studio, there's that fear that's left behind, and like you said, Sylvette, that survivor's guilt. But that didn't prevent y'all from forming a union. So y'all started negotiations, right?
Yes, we're
Yes.
currently in
Um,
negotiations right now.
how is that going?
It's kind of rough. you know, we gave the first draft of our contract, and they pretty much struck everything out. So
Almost everything, yeah. There
yeah,
there was a lot of new policies that we wanted to add, and there's things that are new. Like, for example, one of our proposals is menstrual PTO. And I know that's not very common, but it's kind of sucks that because you were born with a uterus, you have technically less sick days than the cis men do. So I wanted to propose at least a few days for people that get very strong periods and stuff like that. And there was a lot of other stuff and policies that we were trying to implement. But basically, it almost all got struck out, and they're like, no, because the Puerto Rico law is this. But recently, we learned that just because the law here says so doesn't mean it's needed. It needs to be done like that. We can do better.
yeah,
So we're gonna try to push for some things at least on equal, like, middle grounds and see how
Yeah.
that goes.
I love that. Menstrual time off. Wow. That's just such. That's something that never crossed my mind when we were negotiating at Titmouse. Now I wish it had, because that's such a huge. That's such a huge thing, About how many, like, what's the percentage of like AFAB folks at Gladius to like cisgendered folks?
Almost
Um,
half, right?
Really?
no, AFAB is like, well,
Yeah, female assigned at birth, right? Yeah.
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 assign
It's
female.
we're
Oh
we're all
yes,
yeah
we're pretty
we're almost half.
Yeah.
we're pretty
Mm,
equitative on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of our
Wow.
management is
Yeah. Most of
Are
the
women?
AFAB.
management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they want an extra day
So,
off?
Oh, they
Exactly.
want it, but you know.
They
yeah.
do want it, probably.
Um, yeah, like stuff like that and parental leave, and it's just so huge to adjust your quality of life for the positive, you know?
Yeah.
Um, what was like the most common concern that folks had when you were talking to them during your campaign?
I think closing down the studio was the the big one.
The job
Yeah.
security, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of us we've been there working so long that it's the being being left without a job in something that we genuinely like. Like I love being able to work on what I do in Puerto Rico, which is not very common. We only have like if we have any studios here, I can count them with this hand, and it's missing a finger, so that says a lot. So and with this hand, there's not many of us here. There's usually people here that work on creative work. They're doing it freelancing, so it's good, but it's not as sustainable as having a job that you get paid consistently. There's that job security. And so I'm like, well, I lose my job, I can always just go back to retail. But honestly, I'm just gonna hate myself every day because I've been working at retail and fast food, and I despised it. I would rather I say pick your poison. I would rather stay here and fight for it to be a better place than having to go back to the hole where I was before I got here. So because I genuinely care about the people I work with. But so job security was a big thing for us. So the closing down the studio would have been like, what are we gonna do? We're just gonna be one of those another statistic of creative people that work at retail, or
Yeah.
you know
And
we don't.
if the studio closes down, another Gladius is gonna take its place probably, and they're not gonna learn the same things that we learned. So, you know,
Yeah,
it's better we solidify the base
Yeah.
because there's like Manati, right? Manati.
Manati Studios,
Happy.
They're
Yeah.
another
SRG.
animation studio. SRG is a video game studio. 8-Bit Bosses is a video game studio, but they're still very small. So
Yeah, and
we gotta
some of them just
unionize
work
those
by
two.
project contract, so it's not
Yeah.
like a stable payment.
I was gonna ask like how many other studios there are, um, and y'all know. If any of the folks are watching from those studios, let's form a union. And
I
that
mean,
way
we
you
got
know
ex
that.
coworkers
Yeah.
working on there.
Yeah,
Um,
we got some people that went with them.
oh, right on. Um, was that pre or post union?
Pre
Pre.
Pre-union, yeah, post
post layoff.
layoffs.
Oh, I see. It's the folks who were laid off.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
The
I'm glad that
timeline.
they're working.
Hmm.
That's super important. But yeah, it's just so interesting to hear about you guys' journey at Gladius, and I think the thing that I failed to ask y'all right at the top is because I was just so excited to hear about all of the organizing stuff. I failed to ask like what exactly do y'all do at Gladius? Like what does Gladius produce?
yeah. I can try and go first. What I do is I do game programming. We mostly work with clients to make VR games or VR experiences, and we also do AR. We sometimes dabble in mobile games. We're working on one right now for a local brand. And recently, I've also helped out a little bit with the animation pipeline. Since they switched to Unreal Engine, I'm helping out, as an Unreal generalist, helping them out with some scripts and stuff like that.
Hey, cool. So y'all do like you make mobile games, you make animated series or like animation for shorts?
We
Generally,
are,
just
Series,
yeah,
animation.
shorts, yeah, just general animation, anything the client
yeah.
wants.
A lot
Gotcha.
of commercials, animated commercials,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Music videos. We've done a
music videos,
few
yeah.
for already. We've done a couple, and that's it's usually what we're trying to work on our own series. Well, series turned movie, but they're still we pay more attention to client work since that's where the most of the money comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Um, yeah, so kind of like a multi-discipline
they
studio.
do a little bit of everything. They
Yeah.
do post
Yeah.
Yeah.
production, animation. They do game or app. Dana has worked in a lot of right apps
Yeah, app
applications.
development, web design also. We've done websites and basic marketing stuff as well. We also do that. And a lot of, yeah, VR experiences, just as Christopher said.
That's so
And
cool.
so yeah, we do a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, like my background's all animation. I've never touched a game. No, I lied. I'm sorry. I worked on like back when the iPhone first came out and the App Store was going bananas. I worked on a like lemonade stand game where I just like animated some stuff for it, but that was pretty much it.
Nice.
I wonder if that game still exists on there. You couldn't search it because there's like 50,000 lemonade stand games. Wasn't that like free for all time where everybody's like, I can make $1 million selling like a fart button on the iPhone.
Hey, it
uh,
worked.
Yeah.
at that time it sure did. I don't think you could get away with that anymore. I heard about an app that
Nope.
like you just get like a diamond, and it's like the most expensive app in the app store, and all you get is a diamond and the ability to say that you bought it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, Another thing I wanted to ask y'all, like before you got involved with forming a union at your studio or doing any research whatsoever, like what was something that you misunderstood about unions or like an idea about unions that you had before organizing that turned out to not be true?
I mean, I don't know if I had a wrong idea of unions because I watch a lot of pro-union propaganda. So I think I was well informed on that front. But yeah, I don't know if you
What about when you
guys.
were a baby? No, I'm just kidding.
He's just born with the fist like this.
Just came out like
Yeah.
this. um, Dana, Sylvette, did you have any like misinformation that
Um,
you?
Mhm. Well, in my case, I knew very little about unions. All the unions that I've heard of was like like the truck drivers for UPS, for example. That's all I knew about unions, regular workers unions. So I was I guess at the beginning I was skeptical for how could they protect us? Like how will this apply to us as creatives? Um, so it was more me not knowing, being exposed to it for like the first time, you could say. So my skepticism came from that, like to what extent could a union protect us, or like how would it benefit us to be like well unionized, and then it's in the name, like we're a team, like we're a union, so together we can like stand for our rights and our right to be respected as employees. So mostly from like in the path to learning all the things that the union can do for us has been very helpful and definitely influenced me to be more pro union.
I think that's a really common thing that I hear, Dana, is like people feel like this is like a blue collar problem. This isn't like a thing
Yeah.
that affects people who work in entertainment and tech, um,
yeah.
and that it's not necessary. Um, but that's a good one. What about you, Sylvette?
I feel like the same with Dana. There was I knew of unions. But I hadn't been doing prior to the interest of actually doing it. I hadn't researched or anything. I just knew that I supported it because I support anything that's people fighting for their rights, I guess. So I support that, anything of that. And I'm like, oh, you guys are good for you, bravo. I don't think we could ever do that. I don't know how. So I felt the same with Dana. Like it was, I knew of unions in other industries, but for the creative industry, it was so new to me. And I'm like, how would that work? And how does I remember I was talking to a client once that I did some freelancing for some art, and she's like, "Oh yeah, so we're unionized at my workplace, so management can say whatever they want out of their ass." And I'm like, "How does that? How does that? Do you guys just all have like a collaborative where you just set yourself tasks? How does that work?" And she's like, "No, we all decide on what we want to do and we apply it." But that wasn't that informative at the time. And I'm like, so unions are like management. I wasn't I wasn't sure on how that would work. I just knew I liked the idea. So I would think that the only misconception is only because that every misconception is because of the lack of education, of course. But it was definitely like unions are definitely not management. Um it's definitely, like democracy. It feels more like that. Like, we all need to agree on this. It's not like we're not the bosses of we don't become automatically the bosses of the whole thing, which is what I thought. Like, oh, we're the back in the day, of course. But it's just we try to get some what it we just try to see some of that control over our own work and over our own environment and all that stuff. Like we get to have a voice, and that's something that we lacked. So that's I would say that was the one misconception I had, that I had no idea how a union would actually work or how it would apply to us also as creatives.
Yeah. Another very common thing that I hear from folks um, is, well, how is this going to work? It's up to us, right?
Yep.
Um, there's like the formal things in place, like having a business agent and a steward and all the things that come like after we negotiate our first contract. But how our union operates is up to us. And also what we get out of it is up to us. Um, Great misconceptions. And I'm glad that y'all found out that it's different.
Yep.
What's the one thing that you learned from organizing at your studio that you would tell to someone who's getting started in the process?
I mean, I would say that asking is free, you know. We talked with Ben a lot. He was very, very patient and super helpful. And he wanted to teach us how to do the steps, you know. So I would say that asking is free, just ask.
It is free. Hit me up, y'all. Hit me up. Dial 1-800-FREE-UNION. I'll be on the other line. I'm just kidding. What about you, Dana?
Well, I'd agree with Chris. Definitely um, being informed on it um, has helped a lot. So, um, definitely, I would say that unions, the unions will definitely help us be more respected. And I've said that a lot, but it definitely is very important. Like, you think that, oh, because just because you're an employee, you don't have a lot of ways to stand up to the boss whenever you're being disrespected. But it is important because we're all part of the same company. We all have to work together. And if things aren't working out, or there's like things aren't right or comfortable in the workplace, then it definitely helps to speak out. And you deserve to be respected. as an employee, as a person, because we're all people who all deserve some respect in this world.
100,000 million quadrillion %. Everyone deserves to be respected at work. Sylvette?
Well, in addition to what my friends here said, I would say being very patient, especially if you're one of the people basically at the helm. If you have a group with you, like we were a small team, so everybody was very active with each other, but we did have some group leaders that were in charge of getting getting in touch with the others and informing them if they missed out on something on a meeting and stuff like that. In the bigger studios, it's kind of a must to have people that are helming that so they can spread out and reach to more people. I would say listen more than you talk. You need to be patient, and I say that as the very impatient person, but and I have ADHD, so I can't shut up at times. So there were times where I just needed to shut up and listen and be like, I need to get in their shoes and see, because I desperately want this, and I'm the type of person that takes risks. But not everybody's like me. Not everybody likes to take risks. Some people just like the safety and the comfort. So you need to empathize with them and see what can what what can you do, what can this as a union do for them, but also what can they do in a union. Offer them that, like, see, this is what you can do if we do this. You don't get to have, you don't get to wait and see if things happen or things change, because that's never going to happen and we all know it. But be patient, be very kind, listen more than you talk, and like I said, can't stress it enough, ask questions. It's You need to go. Unions are amazing, but you need to be informed about it, because when the union busting tactics pop out, you want to be informed. You want to know, okay, this is BS.
Yep.
You don't want them to shake you, because that's how they shake you. They start bombarding you with a lot of fear mongering. So stand your ground, and definitely very important, stick together. We would do this thing where we would, when we came out of the union closet, I call it, we started dressing in yellow every Wednesday, because that was our color of representing we're together, we're unified. We used backgrounds, we used a lot of stuff. There were, when we got the animation guild shirt, we would use it also on designated days, on the Tag Tuesdays. So it was our way to stay together, and we would also spend time outside of work, not necessarily talking about the union, just being together, just having fun as coworkers, but as friends. That will help you a lot, and anything that they throw at you, you're gonna shrug it off. It's gonna be
Hell yeah.
tough,
Hell yeah.
but resilience is key in
Absolutely.
these times.
Um, y'all have so many fans in the chat.
Some of them are coworkers or
That's
former
great. I'm so
coworkers.
glad that they're here. Um, Soul as Dev says, I'd like to mention a Sylvette memorable quote: "Stay humble."
It's correct.
Yep.
Also, Renee Rivers says hi. 100% agreed. Cayman Alado says this team is amazing, love them, and gave a dinosaur head. The Last Wildebeest says not all of us are coworkers. You all are great. You're so great that the video froze. And that's okay. So we do have to wrap, but I want to again just congratulate y'all on your union and say thank you so much for being here. Please come back. I'd love to have you anytime. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you and learn more about your effort. Stussy5150, hello. Wouldn't be an IA Twitch without a tech issue. One day I'm gonna figure this out. I swear. I hate doing the. Anyway, it's always a learning experience. And speaking of learning experiences, last question: what do you wish you knew before you started that you know now?
I can get this one. For me, I would say the union dues thing, because that's the big boogeyman that they always like to use. And TAC has always informed us very well, and that they do the union dues after we reach an agreement. That's something very important that I wish everybody knew, because they get scared off because of the union dues
Hmm.
very early on, and that's like their initial tactic. You know, so
Yep.
that's something I would have loved to know before.
100%. Anyone else?
For me, I would say, what would have I like to know before unionizing? Honestly, I think that the financial part is like Chris mentioned, was very would have been really like, I was not informed. I was afraid to ask about it. Honestly, I'm like, I don't want to ask about dues, because it could scare people off, like the dues and all that. But when did we did dare to ask the question to Ben, they did clear us up that it all depends on the studio. And in Puerto Rico, since we're really small, very small unit, and in Puerto Rico the economy is different. It's still very expensive for the locals here, but it's not California. It's not Florida, it's not New York, it's not any of those. So our fees here would be different than what others pay. So that's something that I wish I wasn't afraid to ask prior, because it's something that definitely stuck to the back of my mind for a long time. Like, what if I'm taking this? We're all making this thing, and then suddenly we can't pay for it. Like, we were so afraid of that, because
Mhm.
we don't earn much, honestly. So we were like, oh my gosh, another debt. That's how I saw it. So it was really helpful to learn later. I wish I could have just asked it before, or known about it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does cost money, because these people, these angels, they help people, actually fight for their rights, and they're doing it on a membership basis. So we still haven't gotten to what our membership amount would be, because we're still kind of working through that. But honestly, I would rather pay something and know I have rights that are gonna be exercised, rather than go back to where I was like, hey, I can lose my job anytime now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Let's see if
and
it's today. Let's see if it's
especially
tomorrow.
especially since Eva and Steve and Michael have all been working extremely hard, and Steve, like they deserve that. you know.
Yeah. Michael Feinstein, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Michael Feinstein is the lawyer for the Animation Guild, and Steve Kaplan is the business agent for the Animation Guild. Yeah. We got to pay that lawyer to help us write a really strong contract and get the things at the negotiating table that are of value for paying for those dues. Which is why the ratification process is also a 100% democratic process. So everybody has to vote on it and has to be approved by all of y'all for it to go into effect. So if it's not good enough, if it's not worth the dues value to your membership, then we go back to the negotiating table and we negotiate for more. Um, Great points. So that
Something I forgot. Strikes. I don't care about strikes. I mean, I support them 100%. But something that they fearmongered us with is strikes. If you go on strike, which is not, hey, we're gonna go on strike, or the union does not make us go on. The union reps do not push us to go on strike. But that's what they try to make us think. We have to vote on it, and there has to be a fair justification on why we're doing this strike. It's not like, hey, we just feel like it. If
yeah.
if
Can you
our main
imagine?
fear is that we wake up, I choose chaos. No, that's not how it works.
I don't want to go to
I
work
didn't
today. I'm
know
going
that.
on strike.
I'm gonna go on strike. Wish we could do that, but no.
No,
So
it's not
these
like a sick
strikes,
day.
they try to kind of fearmonger us, like, oh, if you go on strikes, because they're terrified of strikes apparently. Um, you would get you if let's say that we went on strike, then we would get replaced during that time that we're on strike, and that was a fear, because you got the risk of, you're on strike, you stop the strike, you go back to work, your position is no longer open because it's somebody else's now. But that depends on what strike, and that's what they don't tell you, and that's what I didn't know on what was the difference. Financial strikes, if you're fighting for better wages, then they do have the right to fill your roll up while you're striking. If you're management or the person in charge of negotiating with the union, they wish to not negotiate, you know, uh, in good faith, and they're just refusing. Maybe they have you in a bad work environment. Maybe they just don't want to negotiate fair, for benefits or stuff like that. Then the strike would then them replacing you while you're on strike wouldn't apply. There's a lot of information there that you need to get very educated on, but don't be afraid. Then again, don't be afraid of asking. Not everything is how as the media puts it out. There's a reason why it's happening like that, and just get educated. Honestly.
100%. Again, y'all, it was so fantastic to have you. Come back. I want to talk more about this stuff. We did have a stream all about strikes a while back. And I'm going to make it available on our YouTube page. We have a new YouTube page. It's not new. It's been there, but I'm uploading now. So that's new. It's youtube.com/IATSENY. If you scan the QR code in the lower right-hand side of your screen, it'll take you to our link up top. And all of that information can be found there, as well as a copy of our zine that we were handing out at GDC that we got so many compliments on. And it's also a really handy-dandy organizing tool. Lays out all the steps of how to form a union at your workplace. But again, I want to thank the folks here, Sylvette, Dana, and Christopher, for being here, taking the time out of their day to talk to me on Twitch. And anybody in the chat, thank you for being here. We will see you next Thursday, same time, same place, same me, different people. Unless these folks come back, which I would love.
Whatever you want us.
Sick every week. I hope you all have a great week, and we will catch you next time. See y'all.
Bye.